Attila takes a sip from his glass of whiskey while looking out the window. He's plotting something, and Attila happens to be a famous bandit who's known to constantly rob banks. And this time, he's about to rob a small bank on the outskirts of town. But hold on, let's go back to how this all started. During Attila's childhood, we see a priest dragging Attila to his frustrated grandmother, Anna. The priest tells her that Attila was caught drinking communion wine, and surprisingly, this isn't the first time. Years later, Attila is escorted to Inspector Laszlo's office, where he gets interrogated. It's revealed that Attila is responsible for 26 robberies in the last 6 years. Shocked at how even the police had lost count, Laszlo asks to know everything in detail. And so we're taken to years back again when Attila was still a kid. Attila dreamt of being a star hockey player, but his life wasn't going as he planned. It was so bad that even his father didn't have enough to provide for him or give him a proper education. As a result, Attila gets adopted by his father's brother. But Attila becomes a problem for them, so his foster family enrolls him in a boarding school. However, Attila gets expelled on account that he's a kleptomaniac. The next thing we see is Attila getting dragged into a correctional center, where his hair is cut and he's hosed down before being thrown into a room with other young boys like him. The boys then gather around him and take turns spitting on him. Probably an initiation method, I guess, but that's pretty gross. These kids were made to do tasking drills every day and were basically treated like prisoners. Not up to halfway through the story and back to the present, Laszlo interrupts Attila, saying that his sad stories aren't going to reduce his sentence or change anything. Anyways, going back to Attila's sad past, we can see that he eventually becomes a state mercenary. During his training, he's taught how to shoot and turns out to be the only cadet good at shooting. At night, he gets to work as a prison guard. So, it happens that one night, while he's on duty, he catches 2 prisoners trying to escape. He tries to warn them to stop, but of course they wouldn't listen. He then hesitates to shoot them, so some other officers who have the backbone shoot them down. The following night, Attila can't help but think about how cruel the soldiers were, and fears that he would even have to be like them. With that, Attila slowly gets off the bed and attempts to escape from the army. He successfully leaves the premises and makes his way to a train station. But instead of boarding a train, Attila does it the risky way. That's right, he decided it was smarter to slip under the train car despite the risks that come with it. But it's much better than being locked up in that prison they call a training center. But not to worry, because he's actually strapped on tightly to the car with his belt. After managing to get past security, Attila escapes to Budapest. After arriving in Budapest, Attila steals some bald man's clothes in order to avoid being identified by his uniform. Afterward, Attila gets to declare his total freedom from the army. Now that he's free, the next agenda becomes securing his dream of becoming a renowned ice hockey player. And as such, he finds himself in an ice hockey club where he's chosen to be the goalkeeper. But Attila still really needs to work on his skills in order to be part of the team. He meets Bota, the coach, who's surprisingly kind and willing to accept Attila, but he'd be benched until he can get better. Furthermore, Attila has no place to sleep, but he's willing to work as a cleaner to get a roof over his head. So Bota offers him an apartment. And with that, Attila tries to balance his work and still manages his time cleaning the hockey rink and trying to fix broken lights. His teammates also turn out to be very welcoming and immediately got used to Attila, as can be seen in the guys' after activities. One night, while the guys are hanging out after training, Attila notices a cute girl heading to the subway. He goes after her and fails to get her name, but that doesn't stop him from running up to the next station just to get acquainted with her. She then tells him that her name is Kata. Back to the present, Laszlo is actually getting emotional from Attila's story at the moment. Attila then continues his story. Attila needed a permit as an official citizen, or at least an ID, to be able to get a better job, so he went to the immigration office. Unfortunately, he gets informed that he would need legal documents from home in order to transfer citizenship, so he's asked to return in 2 weeks. And sadly, returning to his hometown was not even an option at the moment. Moving on, Attila goes to the cinemas with Kata, but is unable to pay for their popcorn due to insufficient funds. Kata pays anyway and doesn't mind one bit, but Attila feels the shame. Yet he's unable to do anything. The following day, Attila's teammate and friend Zero offers to help him with the documents. Zero has an uncle who works at the immigration office. He assures Attila that his citizenship papers can be immediately obtained. After training the next day, Attila meets Zolito to borrow some cash for his transfer papers. He then meets up with Zero's uncle, only to find out that the money isn't going to be enough to facilitate the process. But Attila has no more funds. Luckily for him, Zero's uncle still offers to put the process into action. Some days later, Attila finds out the news that some dictator in Europe has died, and he instantly realizes that this might affect his citizenship transfer process. He starts to count his days and fears that he will be deported soon if he doesn't get an ID. He tries contacting Zero's uncle, but there's no response. With no choice left, Attila gathers up the courage to go and see the man himself. But he's told to stop bothering him, or he'll actually have Attila deported sooner than he expects to. That aside, his love for Kata seems to be his only sustenance, or at least it was. Attila gets introduced to Kata's parents, which comes off as awkward. He gets confronted about his future and his work life, but Attila is unable to provide many hopeful answers to that. When Kata leaves to get a drink for them, Attila gets informed by Kata's father that she has a bright future, and that for all he knows, Attila is an immigrant with no future and no hope of even changing his stars. Feeling like he isn't good enough for Kata, Attila leaves but hurts Kata's feelings in the process. We are then taken back to the present with Attila in a holding cell observing a spider which is his only companion. The following day, his interrogation with Laszlo continues. In the next few months, Attila goes to a post office to observe that there are no guards or any form of security, and that's when his stealing intentions build up again. He goes to the market to buy a wig for disguise, and to complete the typical robber look, he purchases a toy gun. The next day, he puts on his disguise and takes a bottle of whiskey to ease the tension he felt. On reaching the post office, Attila announces his intentions, but his expression is way too dumb for anyone to think he's an actual robber. Which is funny, because the women just sit there staring at him. But even though it's his first time, he has to go through with it, right? I mean, he didn't come just to give up. He then yells and takes out his toy gun, causing the women to think he's the real deal. He locks them up in the bathroom and takes out all the money he can find before escaping. He goes through a tunnel, leaving his clothes and shoes behind to avoid leaving traces. Afterward, he returned to his apartment and hid the money in his oven. Finally, feeling like a rich man, Attila goes to have fun. He repays the loan to Zolito and finishes up his citizen transfer process by paying the rest of the money. He then goes to have an extravagant meal and finally purchases a car. And after months of absence, he goes to see Kata at her school. At first, she expresses her anger and hurt feelings to him. But after Attila explains that he left to make some money so he could prove to her parents that he's worthy of her, she instantly forgives him and they're back together again. One time after practice, when Attila is leaving, his friends suddenly gather around him, wondering if he's had to rob a bank to become this rich. But he lies to them, saying it's a result of his investment in bear skins, which he gets from his hometown. And the extravagant life continues for Attila until he realizes that he is already out of cash. So that's when he starts planning an even bigger robbery. This time he does it with a bigger bang and a motorbike for easy escape. But he fails to notice the security guards on duty, just opposite the post office. After successfully robbing the place, he exits with the stolen money and realizes the security guard is onto him. He takes off on his bike but gets hit by a car. However, getting caught seems more detrimental to him as he gets back up on his feet and takes off on his bike. The security guard then gives chase. A chase ensues with Attila almost getting caught. His luck is that he's able to escape by jumping into the nearest river. With that stunt pulled, Attila goes ahead to rob more places, becoming very rich of course, without ever forgetting to take a gulp of whiskey. He eventually becomes the Whiskey Bandit due to his strong smell of whiskey, with his names all over the papers, but no identity tracing back to him. He then takes his relationship goals up the ladder and takes Kata on trips around the world. Then we're taken back to the present, where Laszlo expresses his grief. He claims that only the thieves get to travel around the world while decent men like himself can never perceive such a life. Back to the story, Attila comes late to one of their training sessions one day, but Bota overlooks him and instead introduces him to his son Giza, who is joining the team. During Attila's next robbery, he barely manages to escape and has to spend the rest of the night at the bank's rooftop to avoid being caught by the police. The next morning, he takes off with the stolen funds unseen. As time goes on, Attila becomes the famous Whiskey Bandit, making insane headlines on the news and on the papers. The media even went as far as making a film and a novel about the Whiskey Bandit. During a match that eventually leads to a fight between the hockey players and their opponents, Giza comes to Attila's rescue, and this incident brings both men closer. They start hanging out, and eventually Attila gets too close to Giza that he reveals to Giza his identity as the Whiskey Bandit. Attila is actually planning a much bigger heist, and he needs a partner that will help him watch the doors and keep an eye out for him. Of course, Giza agrees to join him in his ways of stealing, and after the first successful robbery with his partner Giza, the two eventually continue on as partners in crime. During their robberies, Attila adopts a trademark where he steals the bank's money and leaves behind a bottle of whiskey. One time after practice, Attila spots Giza talking about a robbery and drags him out to accuse him of being a snitch. However, Giza swears that he's not that stupid, so Attila gives him a warning and lets him off. But in my opinion, Attila's life took a downturn after enlisting Giza as a partner. On their next mission, the two men survey the next target bank and carry out their plan. At first, it starts going smoothly, but suddenly one of the guards rushes into the safe and locks himself. Because of this, Attila and Giza are unable to steal much money. They soon notice the workers at the front of the bank who immediately confront the robbers the moment they step out. Attila fires 2 shots at the floor to pave the way for himself and his partner, and a chase immediately ensues between them and the workers. The police soon join the chase, while both men split up, but Attila is chased down and forced to steal a car. The chase gets even more crazy when the police start to fire shots at him. After a car collision between Attila and the officers with a parked car, Attila barely manages to get his car moving and escapes once more. On reaching home, he proceeds to take out the glass shards on his back when Kata suddenly shows up. Kata is shocked, and as much as she is tempted to know what's going on, she decides not to ask him. Attila then tells her to take the money in the bag beside him and hide it. Back to the present, Laszlo has gotten quite the amount of evidence he needs to file later in court. But Attila feels betrayed because he has said nothing but the truth. He never intended to hurt anybody, and he never did. As his story continues, Attila and Giza are having a drink when Attila makes him promise that if one of them ever gets caught, then the other should wait at least 3 hours so the other will be able to cross the borders and escape. Giza agrees, and they prepare for their next robbery of a Hungarian bank. Before they start, Attila forces the guard to lock the doors, and he takes the keys away. After emptying the safe with Giza keeping watch, the duo attempts to exit the bank but realizes that the door is still locked. Unfortunately, they've also been surrounded by the police. In an attempt to escape, Attila shoots the glass on the door, creating enough time for them to run. Sadly, Giza eventually gets caught while Attila escapes. Giza then remembers the 3 hours rule and refuses to give out any information despite being continuously tortured. Meanwhile, Attila arrives home, packs his bags, and leaves with his dog. Back at the station, Giza is beaten so badly, and when he's asked a question by Laszlo, he replies by requesting the time. This gives him away, as the smart inspector Laszlo catches on that Giza's waiting for a particular time to start talking. He locks Giza up and goes to inform the guards outside to fast forward all the clocks to 2 hours ahead and come back a bit after dark to deceive Giza. After they return, Giza falls for it and starts to spill out all the information he knew about his partner, the Whiskey Bandit. Meanwhile, Attila, who's at the border, is approached by a policeman and taken to the immigration office. Soon after, the policemen arrive, and Attila's story as the Whiskey Bandit ends. During that time, his identity gets revealed to the public, and Bota, alongside his teammates, is more than disappointed to find out that not only is Attila the Whiskey Bandit, but he has managed to even drag Giza into it. Later, Kata comes to visit Attila in prison, but not because she misses him or not because she's there to help. She reveals that the money he had given her to hide has been squandered by her, and to top the icing on the cake, she's now with another man. She did not. On Laszlo and Attila's last meeting, Laszlo claims he will be charging Attila with attempted murder. That aside, the poor man is pissed off that since he's been on Attila's case, he has divorced his wife due to lack of attention, and that his kids won't even talk to him. Attila knows he's done for, so he devises another plan. With the cables he had stolen from Laszlo's office and the sheets from his cell, Attila uses them as a rope to help himself escape from the facility. The police soon figure out that Attila is gone, and about 60 detectives get dispatched to hunt him down. The SWAT team was also dispatched, and so Attila was declared caught that same evening. He got a sentence of 17 years in prison, but was released after serving 12 years. Now he makes a living through the trade he learned while in the cell. And this is the end. This was a recap of the 2017 movie The Whiskey Bandit, directed by Nimrod Antal, starring Vince Gialli. So who else thinks becoming a successful robber was actually worth it? That is, if you've got the guts. Also, do you think it was right of Gata to desert Attila just like that? Let us know in the comments below with #CinemaRecap. Until next time.